I knew the exact moment they decided I wasn't enough, and no one at that table realized they had already revealed everything. They thought I was just another woman trying to marry into their family. They had no idea I had spent decades commanding fleets, making decisions that carried the weight of lives, nations, and silence. And that night, I chose to let them continue, long enough to show me exactly who they were, before I showed them who I was. Stay with me, because what happened next didn't just end a dinner, it exposed something much deeper. And before we begin, tell me in the comments what country you're watching from, and subscribe, because stories like this, they don't end the way you expect. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I learned a long time ago that power reveals more about others than it does about you. In my world, titles open doors before you even speak. They change tone, posture, even morality. People don't respond to who you are, they respond to what they think you represent. That's exactly why I stopped introducing myself as Admiral. With Daniel, I was just an officer. Nothing more. No medals. No rank. No authority. Just a woman with a career that sounded respectable, but not intimidating. And for a while, it felt real. He treated me like an equal. Or at least, I thought he did. Because respect that exists without pressure is honest. But respect that depends on status? That's something else entirely. And I was about to find out which one his world believed in. Michael didn't change overnight. That would have been easier to recognize. Instead, he introduced me to his world slowly, carefully, until one evening, he said it like it was nothing. Dinner with my parents. Saturday. No build-up. No explanation. But something in the way he said parents carried weight, like a test I hadn't agreed to take. His father, Thomas Whitaker, was a man who saw life as a ladder, and believed he stood near the top. His tone was controlled, his posture precise. He didn't ask questions to understand, only to evaluate. His mother, Eleanor Whitaker, was quieter, but far more calculated. Her kindness wasn't natural, it was conditional, shifting depending on what she decided someone was worth. And Michael? He called them a traditional. What he didn't explain was how people like them treat someone they've already decided is beneath them. And that was exactly the version of me they were about to meet. The house was exactly what I expected, controlled, polished, designed to impress without ever needing to try. Thomas opened the door himself. His handshake was firm, but his eyes had already moved past me, scanning for something, or deciding there was nothing to find. Eleanor, he said, like he was confirming a detail, not greeting a person. Margaret followed, her smile warm in shape but not in substance. We've heard so much, she added, though her tone suggested she hadn't needed to. Dinner began with precision. Glasses aligned. Questions timed. So, Thomas said, folding his hands, Michael mentioned you're in the Navy. I nodded. I am. A pause. Measured. And what level would that be? It sounded neutral. It wasn't. Before I could answer, Margaret tilted her head slightly. It must be stable work. Not respected. Not impressive. Stable. I felt it then, the quiet framing. Not who I was. But where I belonged. And I hadn't even spoken yet. I answered carefully. I manage operations. True. Just not complete. Thomas nodded, slow and deliberate, like he was placing me into a category he already understood. Coordination roles are important, he said. Not everyone is suited for command. Margaret smiled faintly, lifting her glass. Support positions require patience. The word support lingered longer than it should have. Michael didn't correct them. Didn't even hesitate. He just continued eating, as if this tone, this quiet reduction, was normal. I noticed everything. The way Thomas never asked what I'd led, only what I assisted. The way Margaret's warmth sharpened every time I spoke, like she was testing the limits of my reach. And Michael? He didn't look at me once. Not when they minimized me. Not when they reframed me. not when they decided who I was. That's when it became clear. This wasn't curiosity. It was judgment, dressed as conversation. And it was only getting started. By the time the main course arrived, I wasn't being questioned anymore. I was being placed. Thomas leaned back slightly, studying me with the calm certainty of someone who believed he had already figured everything out. Ambition is good, he said, almost casually. But knowing your ceiling? That's what separates people who succeed from those who struggle. Margaret nodded, her voice softer, but no less precise. And balance matters. Some careers demand sacrifice, but not all of them lead somewhere meaningful. It wasn't loud. It wasn't direct. But it was deliberate. They weren't asking who I was anymore. They had decided. And Michael? He smiled faintly, like this was a normal conversation. Like none of it required interruption. That was the moment something shifted. Not anger. Clarity. Because I realized I hadn't lost control of the room. I had lost something else entirely. Respect. And the worst part? No one there thought it had ever been mine to begin with. I stopped correcting them. Not because I couldn't. Because I understood something more useful than confrontation. People reveal more when they feel safe being wrong. So I became quiet. I let Thomas continue speaking about real leadership as if it was theoretical. I let Margaret explain, gently, how people in service roles often find fulfillment in structure rather than influence. And Michael, he stayed comfortable in their assumptions, never once stepping outside of them. At some point, I stopped being a person at that table. I became an idea they had already defined. Inside me, nothing exploded. Nothing showed. But something settled. A decision without emotion. Because I didn't need them to respect me. I needed them to believe they were right. And the more they spoke, the more certain they became. That I was exactly what they thought I was. That night, I didn't lose sleep over what they said. I studied it. Every sentence Thomas used carried hierarchy hidden as wisdom. Every phrase from Margaret disguised judgment as concern. And Michael's silence, that was the most honest part of all. He didn't defend me. He didn't challenge them. He simply accepted their version of me. And that told me everything I needed to know. In my world, you don't learn the truth by asking questions. You learn it by watching what people do when they think there are no consequences. So I made a choice. Not to correct them. Not to reveal anything. But to let the story continue exactly as they were writing it. Because I wanted to see how far they would go when no one stopped them. And more importantly, what they would do when they realized they had been speaking to someone they never bothered to understand. By the second dinner invitation, I was no longer a guest. I was a category. Thomas greeted me with the same controlled nod, already halfway through his conclusions before I even sat down. Margaret offered the same soft smile, the kind that never reached her eyes. Michael seemed relieved by the routine of it. Like nothing needed to change, because nothing important was being challenged. This time, the conversation shifted even further away from me. They spoke about careers, networks, influence, things they believed I could hear, but not truly understand. Thomas said, most people think leadership is about titles. It isn't. It's about being recognized by the right circles. Margaret added gently, and knowing where you fit. No one asked where I fit. No one needed to. Because in their minds, the answer had already been written. And I let them believe it, because that belief was starting to become useful. After that night, I changed nothing externally. Same visits. Same seat. Same silence. But internally, I stopped being a participant. I became an observer. I paid attention to what Thomas repeated most often: control, hierarchy, recognition. Not as values, but as insecurity disguised as certainty. Margaret revealed herself differently. She didn't argue. She adjusted reality gently until it matched her comfort. If something didn't fit her view, she simply softened it until it disappeared. And Michael. He was the most predictable of all. He mirrored them. Not because he agreed with everything, but because it was easier than conflict. That realization mattered more than anything they said. Because it meant none of them were reacting to me. They were reacting to a version of me they had created. And the more comfortable they became with that version, the more dangerous the truth behind it became. I didn't reveal myself. Not yet. Instead, I made a call from a secure line late at night, one that didn't belong to my officer identity but to something far above it. No emotion in my voice. No urgency. Just instruction. Pull background engagement logs, I said. Focus on the Whitaker household interactions and financial exposure points. Quietly. No questions were asked on the other end. Only confirmation. The next days, nothing changed at the dinner table. But something changed underneath it. I began noticing patterns I had ignored before, names Thomas dropped too casually, networks he relied on but didn't fully control, and small inconsistencies in how confident he pretended to be. Margaret kept talking about stability, unaware that her own stability was more fragile than her tone suggested. And Michael? He still looked at me like I was temporary. That was the mistake. Because I was no longer just watching them. I was mapping them. 2 days after the call, I received the first report. Clean. Precise. Confirming what I already suspected, Thomas Whitaker's influence wasn't as stable as he projected. Several of his trusted connections were quietly distancing themselves due to undisclosed financial pressure. Nothing illegal on the surface. But enough cracks to matter. That same night, at dinner, Thomas spoke louder than usual. He laughed more. Interrupted more. A man compensating without realizing it. Margaret tried to maintain her calm narrative, but her questions about my future plans became sharper, less curiosity, more inspection. Michael, however, started watching me differently. Not with understanding. With doubt. As if something in my silence no longer felt harmless. That was the risk of what I was doing. The longer I stayed unseen, the more dangerous it became for them to notice I was never invisible at all. The call came the morning after. A short message from command, a reassignment opportunity, temporary international advisory role. High visibility. Immediate deployment possible. It would have pulled me away cleanly. No explanations needed. No confrontation required. And that was exactly why I hesitated. Because leaving now would end the observation, before the truth fully revealed itself. So I did something I rarely do. I declined. Not emotionally. Strategically. I needed closure inside this room, with these people, under these assumptions. That choice came with a cost. Distance from my own world. Delayed operations. And increased personal exposure in Michael's life, where every day I stayed, the risk of discovery grew. At dinner that night, nothing changed on the surface. But internally, I felt it clearly. I had crossed from observation into commitment. And the moment I stayed, I stopped being a guest in their story. And became the force waiting behind it. Everything changed the night Thomas made a mistake. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was casual, dangerously casual. He mentioned a pending defense contract, laughing as if it was already secured. Connections will handle it, he said, waving his hand. But I knew that tone. That wasn't confidence. That was assumption. Later, I reviewed the report again. The same connections he trusted were unstable. Not broken yet, but close enough to collapse under the right pressure. And now I had all the pressure points. Margaret's dependency on social image. Thomas's over-reliance on perceived influence. Michael's need to maintain peace at any cost. They weren't a united front. They were separate vulnerabilities sitting at the same table. That night, I didn't sleep. Because I realized the plan wasn't something I was building anymore. It was already built. All that remained was the moment they realized they had been standing inside it the entire time. The dinner was supposed to be routine. Same table. Same forced politeness. Same quiet hierarchy they believed was still intact. Until my phone rang. I didn't step away. I answered. Admiral Vance, the voice on the line said clearly, "We need your confirmation on the Whitaker-linked assessment briefing. The secured dossier is ready for your authorization." The room changed before I even spoke. Thomas froze mid-sentence. The glass in Margaret's hand stopped halfway to her lips. Michael looked at me like he was hearing a language he had never associated with me. There was a pause. Then Thomas forced a laugh. "I think there's been a mistake." "No mistake," I said calmly, still looking at the screen. "Continue." The voice on the line confirmed operational summaries, flagged financial instability in Thomas's network, pending defense exposure risks, and verified my identity clearance level. Silence hit the table like weight. Margaret's expression collapsed first. Thomas tried to speak again, but nothing came out clean. Michael finally whispered, "Admiral." And I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. "Yes," I said. "That's who I am." And everything they built their assumptions on broke at once. After that night, no one tried to pretend anymore. The title Admiral didn't create fear in that room, it created collapse. Not because I demanded it, but because it exposed what had always been there. Thomas Whitaker was the first to face consequences outside the dinner table. The flagged financial instability tied to his defense-adjacent network triggered an official review. It wasn't dramatic, no arrests, no public scandal. Just quiet administrative removal from trusted circles, frozen contracts, and revoked informal access. The kind of ending men like him never see coming, because it doesn't announce itself. Margaret Whitaker retreated from public life within weeks. Her influence wasn't built on power, it was built on perception. Once perception broke, there was nothing left to maintain. She stopped hosting, stopped attending, and eventually stopped speaking about that night altogether, as if silence could rewrite it. And Michael. Michael was the only one who tried to reach me after. Not immediately. Days later. Then weeks. He asked for explanation, then forgiveness, then understanding. But what he was really asking for was permission to return to ignorance. I gave him none of it. Because nothing I revealed that night was hidden out of revenge. It was hidden out of choice. And he had already made his. When I finally met him one last time, it wasn't in that house. It was in a neutral place, empty of history. He said, "If I had known who you were." I interrupted him once. "You did know who I was," I said. "You just didn't think it mattered." That was the truth that ended everything. Not my rank. Not my authority. But their assumption that respect is optional until it becomes unavoidable. There was no dramatic goodbye, no closure speech. Just distance, clean, permanent, final. I returned fully to my command responsibilities afterward. No more hiding. No more testing. No more watching people decide my worth in real time. The Navy didn't treat me differently. Because it never needed to discover who I was. Only they did. And the last lesson I carried from that table stayed with me long after it was empty. People don't lose respect because truth is revealed. They lose it because they were never willing to give it without permission. And I stopped asking for permission a long time ago. If this story stayed with you, take a second to like the video so more people can find it. Comment your thoughts below, especially what you would have done in her place when respect only appeared after truth was revealed. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one.